for at the time sitting on stage with a big old cast on my foot, you know.
Yeah.
But I mean, I found a way. I got one of those scooters.
Welcome to Nasdaq's Boardroom Trivia. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq, and I'm joined by TK Kerstetter of Boardroom Resources. Each month we go through a number of trivia questions in terms of what's the most important questions facing boardrooms of America today. And TK, we have a pretty relevant topic this month, the boardroom and cybersecurity. Can only imagine what it's like being in Equifax's boardroom over the past couple of weeks, but this is something that's incredibly relevant to boards and the management teams right now.
Well, it is, and it's so complex, and some of it's state-sponsored, with our adversaries out there in the world. Some of it's a game to people that are just expert hackers. It's really very difficult, and when you think that most board members during their careers, because they're in their 60s and 70s, have not had to deal with this in their normal business environment, so that makes it even more challenging in the sense that this is new to them, okay? And so that's one of the issues. The other is boards have tried to deal with this by getting what I call token digital directors on. But typically somebody that comes on the board that only has that skill set has trouble being a well-rounded director. So it's going to take some time for us to get people with good director skills that also have sort of IT and data security. So it's a challenge for the board, no question. And that's some of these questions should relate to that in our trivia.
It's really relevant to what we discussed in September about age diversity on the board, and this is exactly why. So with that said, let's jump into some of these trivia questions. Let's go to trivia question number 1. True or false, 81% of corporate directors indicate that their company has appropriately tested its resistance to cyber attacks. Now, this was interesting because only 32% of respondents got this correct.
Well, I sympathize with them because I'm not sure that with all that I know, would answer this as true, okay? This is from the PwC study, and we do have to remember that 44% of that 81 said they completely feel comfortable, okay? And then another 37% said moderately. I understand somebody answering the question moderately, but just of what we talked about just now, to answer the question that they're fully satisfied that they are, have done everything possible to prevent a breach, I just can't imagine because it's just too complex. Okay, but the answer in the survey, if you take those two categories, moderately comfortable and very comfortable, it is 81%. So
that was in fact true.
Yes.
I'm surprised that the number was that high, to be honest with you, because of the complexity.
Yeah, I think this is a little over-exuberance from directors, too. I mean, I just can't. It almost suggests that they don't understand how complex cyber is and how nobody can prevent it. You just need to be prepared to mitigate it the best you can. Yes, there are some things that you should be doing, maybe in a future show that we'll talk about, but it is very difficult. Some people have been breached and don't even know they've been breached, okay? So let's just say that there was some exuberance in directors answering this question.
Well, because you can't see it. It's not like if you're checking inventory, physical inventory, okay, so I'm short 5% on this particular piece of product. This is something that you can't physically see. But let's turn to question number 2. Blank percent of directors indicate that their full board oversees cyber risk, while blank percent have assigned it to a specific committee. Now, the correct answer here was 25% of directors indicate that their boardroom oversees cyber risk, while 75% have assigned it to a specific committee. And again, 31% got this question right.
Yeah, so 70% missed it, okay? Very difficult to tell, what that mix should be, but it's interesting that more people said the other way around. More people said 75% at the board level, 25% in committee. But if you look at what happens in boardrooms today, a lot of the down and dirty work happens in the board committees, okay? So cyber risk gets assigned. If you want it to be down and dirty, which you do, you assign it to a committee. Now, there's a big question of where does that get assigned, though, because you have the audit committee, which probably in most cases has cybersecurity, but their agenda is so filled today that they can't give much time to it. So then it brings up the debate of whether there should be a risk committee, okay, or even a cyber committee. So that, all that goes into this question. Now, for the 25% that said the board should own it, technically, the board does own it. Okay, when you assign something to a committee, yes, they're responsible for doing the work. But as far as liability goes, the whole board is responsible for everything that happens at that level. So again, this was a question from Spencer Stewart's board index. There may have been some confusion because in a legal sense, the whole board owns it, but it is more typical for it to be pushed down so that it's managed by a committee.
All right, let's take a look at question number 3. What is the first step any board should take when implementing a holistic cybersecurity strategy? And the correct answer here was C. They should take inventory of the company's digital assets and rank by importance. We did a little bit better in terms of the correct response rate here. 54% of respondents were correct.
I'm proud of everybody. This is a case where you could have conceivably picked some of the other answers. They were reasonable enough to do that. But the number one primary responsibility is to first identify those assets that are most important to you, okay? Mm-hmm. Or what they call the family jewels, okay? You need to protect the family jewels. And so by placing them or ranking them and identifying the important ones, you don't have an unlimited budget typically. So where should you put your money? In the top of those issues that you've ranked where it's the biggest risk to the company if those were breached.
Mm-hmm. So given the technical nature of cybersecurity, and we touched on this with some of the answers in the questions, how can boards begin to even wrap their heads around this?
Well, it's tough, okay? I mean, there's no other way to say it but that it's tough. There are processes and procedures that you can go through. Again, we mentioned one was identifying this, but there's a lot of other things. Think about it. Think about the devices that are being invented out there that are all access points for somebody to cause a breach, okay? In Target's case, they came through an air conditioner vendor, okay, that happened to be related to the company. We're not sure what happened with Equifax yet, but, I'm not bullish on what can be done short term, okay? But there are things that you can do. You can get firms to come in and purposely try and hack you so you can see where the soft belly parts of your company are. So there's things that you can do, but it's a challenge.
What lies ahead for boards regarding risk? Is this something that you do think we can get under control, let's say over the next 3 to 5 years? What's longer term?
Well, the good news is that more knowledgeable directors will be gradually getting on board. So that's a positive, but that doesn't solve the issue of coming in. I think it's actually going to get a little worse before it gets better, okay? Mm-hmm. Edgar in the government system, Equifax, 143 million people's personal identification.
It's about every adult in the country.
Every adult that has any assets,
right.
Probably, yeah. So I think we're going to see some more incidences before we start to see improvement. But the FBI, Homeland Security, companies, everybody's working together because that's what it's going to take to be able to figure out how to set up these defenses.
All right, so to wrap up, where can boards get more information on this?
Well, interesting enough, Nasdaq's Corporate Solution has a white paper on cybersecurity. I'm familiar with it. It's a good read. On our website, on boardresources.com, we've got plenty of shows that we've done on cyber, shows with the FBI, shows with security officers, shows with people that'll tell you the steps to take. And then also there are links that are put into the Nasdaq's blog, Market Insights. Mm-hmm. So that's another great place to get information.
All right, well, thank you very much. And everyone, remember to tune in November as TK and I tackle another big issue that's facing America's boardrooms. Thank you very much for joining us. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq.